the pattern that made intuition unreliable. For most of history, intuition was trusted. It felt immediate, personal, right? Then a pattern emerged that intuition kept getting wrong. To understand why intuition lost its authority, we need to look at how humans learn from experience. Early reasoning depended on direct feedback. You acted, you observed, you adjusted. Patterns were learned through repetition, not calculation. Intuition evolved to work in this world. It was calibrated for environments where feedback was immediate, consequences were visible, and the scale of events matched the scale of human perception. This mattered because intuition felt efficient. It compressed experience into instinct. Decisions could be made quickly without analysis. In familiar environments, it worked remarkably well, but as systems grew larger, more abstract, feedback changed. Cause and effect drifted apart. Outcomes were delayed. Patterns became statistical instead of visible. Intuition was still responding, but the environment no longer matched what evolved for. Then numbers revealed something uncomfortable. When outcomes were tracked at scale, intuition failed repeatedly. People misjudged probabilities. They misunderstood averages. They expected balance where none existed. The same intuitive shortcuts produced consistent errors. At first, these mistakes felt like exceptions, but the data kept repeating the same pattern. Intuition wasn't randomly wrong. It was predictably wrong. The errors followed patterns that could be mapped, measured, and anticipated. This discovery transformed intuition from a mysterious inner compass into a cognitive mechanism with known strengths and documented failure modes. This was the turning point. Intuition stopped being a guide. It became a variable, something to be measured, corrected, and sometimes overridden. And once intuition was shown to fail systematically, trust and feeling gave way to trust and patterns. As these patterns were studied, intuition's limits became clearer. Humans were not bad at reasoning. They were excellent at reasoning in small, immediate environments. But scale changed everything. Intuition struggled with large numbers. Rare events felt impossible. Slow trends felt insignificant. Extreme outcomes were ignored because they were unfamiliar. The mind treated frequency as meaning and vividness as importance. Events that were recent, dramatic, or emotionally charged were given disproportionate weight in judgment, while slow-moving trends and statistical regularities were systematically undervalued. This mattered because modern life is dominated by scale. Markets involve millions. Technologies affect billions. Decisions play out over years instead of moments. Intuition was still reacting, but it was reacting to the wrong signals. The cues that had been reliable indicators of danger, opportunity, and meaning in small-scale environments became misleading when applied to systems operating at scales the human mind was never designed to comprehend. Mathematics exposed this mismatch. When predictions were compared to outcomes, the same biases appeared again and again. People overestimated dramatic risks and underestimated gradual ones. They trusted recent experience over long-term patterns. Intuition was not broken. It was outmatched. As a result, authority shifted. Decisions that once relied on judgment began deferring to models. Algorithms replaced instinct. Data corrected feeling. The personal sense of confidence that accompanied an intuitive judgment was systematically compared against outcomes, and the comparison consistently revealed that confidence and accuracy were far less correlated than people assumed. What felt right became less important than what tested right. But this correction came with tension. Intuition had guided humans safely for millennia. Being told it was unreliable felt like an attack on agency. Numbers did not just challenge beliefs. They challenged identity. To be told that one's instincts were systematically unreliable was to be told that the most intimate and personal form of knowledge, the feeling of knowing, could not be trusted. The conflict was no longer about error. It was about trust, about whether humans should listen to their instincts or to patterns they could not feel. The conflict reached its peak when intuition was no longer merely questioned, but sidelined. Decisions were optimized by models that outperformed human judgment. Predictions improved, errors decreased, and yet something felt lost. This is an emotional breaking point. People were told not to trust what they felt, even when feeling carried urgency. Instincts were labeled bias. Hesitation was framed as irrational. The human role narrowed to execution, not judgment. Mathematically, the models were right more often. They processed more data. They ignored emotion, but they also ignored meaning. They could detect patterns without understanding consequence. The mathematical precision of the models gave them authority over questions of likelihood, but they had no capacity for the kind of contextual judgment that allows a human being to assess whether a statistically optimal outcome is actually acceptable. When outcomes felt wrong, the response was technical, not reflective. This created resistance. People pushed back against decisions they could not explain, even if the numbers justified them. Trust eroded, not because the models failed, but because intuition was excluded entirely. The deeper tension was existential. If intuition was unreliable, what was the role of human judgment? If patterns knew better, what did experience still offer? If a model could outpredict a lifetime of accumulated judgment, what was the value of the human in the loop? These questions struck at the core of what it meant to be a thinking, deciding being. Accuracy improved, but agency weakened. The more decisions were delegated to models, the less opportunity human beings had to exercise and develop their own judgment. The result was a gradual erosion of the very capacity that made human participation in decision-making valuable. The conflict was no longer intuition versus error. It was intuition versus authority, between feeling sidelined by systems that were correct, but not accountable in human terms. The resolution begins when intuition is reframed, not as a competitor to patterns, but as a complement. Intuition excels at context, meaning, and urgency. Mathematics excels at scale, consistency, and repetition. Each sees what the other cannot. This integration changes decision-making. Patterns inform options. Intuition guides judgment. Models provide insight. Humans provide responsibility. Neither replaces the other without loss. The deeper lesson is humility. Intuition is not infallible, but neither are models. One fails silently. The other fails impersonally. Intuition produces errors that feel personal and can be learned from. Models produce errors that feel systemic and resist correction because they are embedded in frameworks too complex for any individual to fully understand. Together, they can correct each other's blind spots. Intuition provides a contextual awareness that models lack. Models provide the statistical rigor that intuition cannot achieve. The combination of the two produces a form of judgment that is both more accurate and more meaningful than either could offer alone. When intuition was trusted alone, it missed patterns. When patterns ruled alone, they missed meaning. The future depends on letting both speak. Intuition became unreliable only when it was asked to do what it was never built for. Restored to its proper role, it becomes valuable again. Not as a final word on any question, but as a source of information that no model can provide. The immediate, embodied sense of whether something feels right, which, when combined with analytical rigor, produces judgment that is both informed and grounded. So, what do you think? Should intuition lead, or should it advise? Subscribe to join the journey.